that's a great segue. And Wendy and I did not plan this, but we were going to talk, or we should talk about old age and whatever that is, and how it affects our creativity and whether it does or not. I did a little bit of research on this question because it really intrigued me. And science says the effect, it doesn't decline it, it just shifts it. Our age
Yes.
through several generations just shifts that creative spark. And that we tend to peak as far as our brains in our 30s, I think. And then, but I don't know. I thought it was a Joe, you were the one who suggested this topic. I thought it was extremely, yeah, you did. I have it on tape. Um, what, how has it affected you, or has it, or what spurred your interest?
I have been thinking about this quite a bit. And I think, okay, first, I think we need to knock out things like disease, mental disease or mental health, dementia, Alzheimer's, and all of those things, and just say, if we have a relatively healthy brain first. The story about Agatha Christie, who, as she aged, went from, I can't remember the numbers, but from an unbelievably enormous vocabulary to a very limited one.
Oh.
As sort of by the time she'd written her last book, her vocabulary was much reduced. And I'm afraid that I am finding that to an extent, that words don't come quite as easily to me as they used to. I don't think the idea part of it is at issue for me, at least not yet. Um, and the other thing that I've been really thinking quite a lot about lately is the physical element, and I mean the rest of the corpus, not the brain, um, being more limiting than my brain cells, I would say.
Mhm.
I have arthritis in my neck and in my lower spine and in my hands, and I'm, yeah, blessed with arthritis. And I would say that that is a bigger issue for me because I just don't have enough pain-free hours in a day, basically. I think that for me is the limiting factor. So yes, it's partly age related, it's partly genetic. In my case, there's a lot of arthritis in my family. I've inherited this from my grandmother almost for sure. It's taken the same pattern and like here we go. And so have my cousins. So I would say it depends on your issues. Sometimes it's a matter of physical issues because arthritis makes me very, very tired sometimes too, because it's very hard to battle that much pain every day. I hate taking painkillers. Um, but sure, there are things that are age related, but I don't think necessarily that age affects our creativity
I
if
agree.
we are meant, healthy from here up, from the chin up,
Mhm.
for the most part. It may slow us down a little bit, but yeah, I think I've thought about this for several days now and, tried to sort of absorb it and thought about my husband brought up the Agatha Christie thing. I went, that's an interesting point. But she was struggling with, mental deterioration. Um, but we don't all. And yeah, I think not necessarily. How's that for an answer after all that?
I also worry about a diminishment of my vocabulary. And sometimes I'll read stuff that I wrote when I was younger. And I think to myself, can I write like that now? Could I do it? And it worries me that maybe I can't. But then I'll write something, I'll go, okay, it's all right. It may not be quite as good, but I haven't lost it totally. But on the other hand, I think that our lives, the duration of our lives, the experiences we collect, the people we meet, I'm not sure if that enhances our creativity, but it certainly provides us with so much more material to work with, and also the ability to analyze what happens throughout life. You get a different perspective on people's behavior, on history, on people's expectations of what their lives are going to be like, what their emotional response is. So it's probably a mixed bag. Possibly we don't have the creative flow that we might have when we were younger, but I also think that there's growth in terms of what we've experienced in life.
I can almost pick up a book almost and tell whether the writer is on the younger side or the older side, just by their characters' reactions to a situation or to each other.
Well, I would agree entirely with both Joanne and Harriet, because I have similar issues, Joanne, with severe osteoarthritis, hands and everything. I went through a period just recently where I had radial tunnel issues. So I had to get into Tai Chi to, take care of that. And chair Tai Chi works great. But I really feel that our experiences, our life experiences, our desire to continue learning really informs our writing. And I find the quality of reader is informed by the quality of the writer too. So when you get somebody who's criticizing your books, generally speaking, they are someone who does not have much in the way of life experience or education. And so I don't feel that we are hampered by our age and our creativity. There are so many examples through history where people became extremely creative in the later stages of their life because they had that time to develop those skills where they didn't have time when they were raising children, when they were working full time. Now they have the opportunity to explore that creative process.
I think there's a whole bunch of things. I think there's so many distractions that I can get to now. My attention span isn't as long as it used to be. I also have a fear of Alzheimer's. It is one family member who had it. And when I can't come up with a word, or I forget a fact, or I lose something and can't find it, there's a part of in the back of my brain that's going, oh my God, this is it. This is the downhill, decline right now. So there's that too. I do find that I could write for 5-6 hours before, and I can't do that now. I can go for 2 hours, maybe an hour and a half, and then I have to stop, and I have to be in the mood. My brain has to be in the groove to start to write. It's almost like a muscle that I need to flex. And if I don't flex it as often, I'm losing it. Vocabulary-wise, I think it's still there, but it's the recall of the words.
Mm-hmm. But you make a really good point about exercising the muscles. As we advance a little bit, we need to exercise all our muscles. And it is harder to force ourselves to do that, I think, because certainly if you have, like in my case, in Wendy's case, you have, you're fighting some issue. You have to work at it, right? And that goes for the brain and the body. And, here we are. And, isn't this though, if I may, for the younger listeners, a cautionary tale for those in their 30s and 40s who are, madly working and or raising children and all the rest of it, but to, keep the brain working on the creative side to the extent possible, along with all the rest of it, whatever that looks like for you. Like, I don't care what you're doing. Are you a reader? Are you a potter? Are you a bird watcher? I mean, I think that I think I should have done more than that over the years, because for decades, all I did was work. I just worked and worked and worked. And, you know, to the extent that I am in a somewhat creative field, you know, I'm counting widgets, I'm writing. Um, I was very fortunate, but you know, you got to keep that thing going all along, or I don't know if you, I don't know. I think it helps because you learn how to use that muscle
Yes.
instead of having to, you know, wade into it later in life. You know, I don't know. What you guys have said about having the time and the mostly the time, I suppose, and maybe the relaxation to investigate this out, say, post-retirement or something, um, is extremely valid. But I don't know if that goes for everybody either, you know. If we want to remain mentally healthy and creative, we have to work on it, and maybe not when we turn 55, you know. Like, I don't know. I'm throwing that out there.
Wendy,
That's
go
where I
ahead.
find research has come in. Is really to me it works the muscle, the brain.
Yeah.
Doing in-depth research, and sometimes you end up going down a rabbit hole and finding new little tidbits that you might want to use later on. I also think sometimes, particularly as a retired person, my expectations for my memory exceed my capability because I have forgotten more than I remember. I have gone through so much of my life of having to be aware of the tiny little details that I've allowed myself in my non-work life to let that go. So I think that has helped my creativity in a way.
Yeah, sometimes forgetting is a blessing. Perhaps by us being authors, writing the way we write, we are exercising that little muscle a lot more than the general public.
Yeah, absolutely. And I thought of something else. Sorry to interject, but
No, go. That's
it's that part of the raison d'etre of our writing is that we create these characters who operate in our stories. The plot, you wouldn't have a book, you wouldn't have a story, you wouldn't have a plot without characters. And we develop those characters. And I always think that the characters I'm creating, they have lives, and I know much more about their lives than will probably ever make a page. But I think about them all the time. I've developed how they grew up, what their experiences were, what was their education. So it's not only their interaction with the other characters, it's their backstory. And I think being able to do that and enjoy the process and find it challenging exercises that muscle, even when it's not going to show up in our writing necessarily. The character's personality is shaped by that.
And there's problem solving. You're the writer, you're constantly trying to solve the plot. You've got a plot hole that you need to fill, or you know that you have to have this thing happen for this thing to happen, but how do you organize it? And so you're in the back of your mind, that sort of ticking and ticking and ticking. The people that are perhaps not doing that are playing games on their phones, or they're reading in a book, reading our stories, it's kind of passive. Whereas when you're writing, it's an extremely active process of constantly deciding about vocabulary and words, and where do you put this chapter, and how do you start this chapter. It's aggressively intellectual. And then for some of you, there's a whole lot of research that has to be done, which also is stimulating your brain.